Kasama natin si Ginoong Felix Fariñas. Siya po ay nakasama mismo doon sa ginawang Interfaith Humanitarian Mission. At siya po ay nasa All Workers Unity Group ng UP, Diliman. Siya po ay nandun sa European Languages. Kaya kung medyo may foreign sounding mamaya, sa kanya galing yan. Kasama rin natin si Ginoong Isagani, Abunda. Siya po ang Media and Advocacy Coordinator ng All Out Peace Movement at ng isa pang grupo. Ito yung Mindanao Peace Weavers. Can peace really come to Mindanao? That is a good question. Sky, magandang umaga.
Magandang umaga po. Eid Mubarak po sa ating mga brothers and sisters na Muslim. And magandang umaga sa ating mga guests for today. Gusto kong malaman actually ngayon kung ano yung mga updates na sa Marawi, sa mga refugees natin doon, anong nangyayari na ngayon. May pasok na rin ba yung mga kabataan doon? So, malalaman po natin lahat yan ngayong umaga dito sa Tapatan sa Aristocrat. At sa ating mga media friends na nandito, magandang umaga.
You will have your time to ask questions. We may have to speak in English because of some foreign correspondents who are with us today. But, Mr. Custodio, tell us, ano yung pananaw mo rito? What have you seen in Marawi? Anong meron? May kakaiba ba? May conflict sa Mindanao ng mga nakalipas sa panahon? What makes Marawi so special, if indeed special?
Well, the thing that's unique here is the fact that this was a frontal assault by the Malate group and its affiliates against a major urban area, city in the Philippines. Okay, the last time we had something like this was during the Zamboanga siege. Okay, of a major city being attacked. It shows the difficulty in engaging such types of groups, especially if it's in an urban environment. The danger being that this might already be a template for other armed groups in Mindanao to do in the future. It shows the difficulty in combating them. I remember that just today, I think Gani here was saying that 2 days to clear a house. Okay, these are not nipa huts, or these are not flimsy constructed structures, but actually little forts upon themselves, because they're made of cement. And some of these structures were built with the mind of repelling bullets, because of the fact that many of these places had been hit by conflict in decades past already. So it also, however, shows that the military has, despite the noise that we hear, the military has been, as much as possible, trying to be operating within the bounds of the rules of war. Okay, you don't have something like what the Russians were doing in Chechnya during the Chechen wars. You know, like we're obliterating one city after the other. In this case, yes, heavy weapons are being used, but as much as possible, there is also that concern for unnecessary collateral damage. But the thing is that that has been really slowing down the tempo of operations. Now, the fear, what I was saying a while ago, that the fear that this might become a template for future operations is there. You know, other groups might be emboldened. Okay, and even if that doesn't happen, the fact that you already had an operation in Marawi might result in the government devoting more of its assets, limited assets, to defend other cities in that part of Mindanao, because you have Iligan, which is quite close. Cagayan de Oro is basically a few hours drive away from the combat area. Then you have, there's Pagadian, there are so many cities, okay? And if you're going to try to adequately protect them, then you run the risk of stripping your forces from other places. And when that happens, other rebel groups will also take advantage. Like, for example, when a battalion was withdrawn from from Iloilo, I think, yeah, Iloilo, on that same day or just shortly after, an NPA unit attacked 2 towns in Iloilo. So that then shows that even there is no formal coordination, they do sense the fact that there is an overstretch within the government forces. So it's going to be a very difficult thing to do from a strategic standpoint on how to address all of this. But I think my companions here, my colleagues here, they are here to present what is to be done. Okay, so much of the discussion in the past few weeks have always been on the military approach. Okay, I have said so many things about the military, the use and its adherence to rules of war, why the mote is very difficult. But the thing is that not much attention is being paid to what now, okay? Because, for example, when I was asked what is what is my opinion of martial law, my answer would be, okay, it's within the rights of the government to declare martial law, but what is important is what is your end state. And here, we have here, our colleagues here are going to talk about that end state, because it's high time that we really come up with a strategic approach, a holistic approach on how to deal with all of these after effects of a battle in a major urban area. And we're talking here about displaced people and so on and so forth.
About several days ago, the 3 foreign ministers of the Philippines, Malaysia, and Indonesia met at Conrad Hotel in Pasay City and talked about intelligence sharing and probably a concerted effort, a plan of action to rid the region of terrorism. How do you look at the threat of terrorism, if you may, in the Philippines with that of Malaysia and Indonesia?
Well, the thing is that this is not new. Well, I'm old. You're older, and we could remember that in the aftermath of 9/11, that we had a very, very focused approach during the time of Gloria on counterterrorism, and we already had that mechanism set in place. Okay, you had intel sharing. That was a regular feature during the time of Gloria Arroyo. Okay, that. I even remember, if I'm correct, even AMLA, the Anti-Money Laundering Council, AMLAC, or how do you call that? Its establishment was also spurred by the need to control fund transfers or to monitor and control them, because terrorists were using that. So there's nothing really new about what they're saying. They actually have to reaffirm what was already stated so many years ago by all these countries when the war on terrorism had happened. So, but what it remains to be done is, do they have the necessary capability to develop, to deliver what they are claiming?
Okay. We'll have to watch out what will happen next, because they agreed to meet again. And you know, when they meet again, it will take some time to organize everything. Professor, how do you look at the Marawi series of incidents?
Well, basically, this particular humanitarian mission that we joined, the National Interfaith Humanitarian Mission, was aimed at really documenting what's going on. So it visited 4 evacuation sites, namely Bangolo. From Bangolo, which is the center of Marawi, there are people within, or the Maranas have been evacuated to Rawak, which is 6 kilometers from Marawi, and then Lanao del Norte, 15 kilometers. Sagiran, 4.5 kilometers away from home. Pindolonan, 4.9 kilometers away from home. And Iligan City, which is about 40 kilometers away from home. So I've only been documenting what my colleagues have written. We had a debriefing after they came back. So indeed there is a humanitarian crisis there. No? Even if they were only allowed to go to the different evacuation sites and not into Marawi. But the target was Marawi, really to go there and to bring in some of the relief goods that this 400-strong delegation was able to gather before coming to Mindanao, which I think this only shows how they were blocked by the military. It really shows that the LGU or the local government, which previously agreed to let the humanitarian mission enter, it shows how civilian rule, right, or even local government or governance has been eclipsed by martial law. And so I remember at least 2 or 3 harrowing stories, no, that which my friends shared with us during our debriefing. One is that of a young boy who's age 12, and they were having a psychosocial briefing, psychosocial debriefing, no, from some of the experts there, but he wouldn't join. And one of the psychologists came up to him and asked him, because he was just holding on to his phone, nakatitig lang siya sa phone niya. So sabi, bakit hindi ka sumali doon sa mga bata, no, na nagde-debrief? And then he said, I'm waiting for my father's call or text. And it's been like a week, no? So that one. And then the other was that of a woman, a middle-aged woman complaining. Kasi she was rejected by this line, no? Because people were supposed to fall in line. Medyo organized naman, no? So the Department of Health has a list of all the names of people coming from different districts, no? And then per district, you would have your names there, tapos meron kang ration. Pero wala yung pangalan niya doon, wala, no? So she was complaining to one of the participants from UP na, "Hoy, my husband has been carrying stuff, helping around, pawis na siya." Tapos they wouldn't believe me that I'm part of, I'm an evacuee, no? So ang sabi sa kanya nung kasama namin, okay, why don't you just fall in line doon sa kabilang linya because there's surplus there. And then she said, ay, may dignidad naman ako. Why would I sacrifice my dignity? I did not come here to beg. No? So, yung backdrop nito is war. But then you have this woman, a middle-aged woman, ang iniisip niya, that food is not for me. It's for somebody else. So why would I line up there? So you can imagine, no, yung ganong klaseng dignity happening, no, in the context of war. And then third, one man, sabi niya, alam niyo, mas malakas pa yung ihi ko kaysa sa gripo dito. So there were 400 families gathered in one building, right? Tapos isa lang yung faucet, no, na mahina yung tubig. No? So ito yung situation among the evacuees. So there is indeed a humanitarian crisis, not only in Marawi, but in places where people have been evacuated for the first time. So that's a major data that we have gathered. These people have never experienced being evacuated. So it must really impact, no, on their mental health.
And I believe Sir Felix can describe us more kasi he was there for 2 weeks ago, right? Tama ba, sir? So at least masasabi, ano ba yung ambience ngayon ng mga evacuation centers? Kamusta yung mga tao doon? Anong daily activities nila? Sa yung pagkain, yung ano?
Okay, thank you very much. Since I've been told there is a foreign correspondence, I will have to force myself to fit into it to speak the international language. Actually, we are 3 from University of the Philippines contingent which commit to National Humanitarian Mission. Fortunately, they are not here to make more specific. So, sikapin ko na lang po na may share sa inyo. No? Yes, since then, no, talaga, may briefing going on na, no, there is a specific evacuation center which you will choose. No? Actually, there is in Cotabato, in Davao, but we really choose Marawi because I think Marawi is the center of the SIG and the crisis. Ano? So we really wanted to go in there and see for ourselves as a part of documentation team so that we can really assess what is the real situation, first-hand information with the evacuee. So to our dismay, no, even the supposed to be yung nauna nang nabigyan ng permit, those from Makabayan Block, no, they are even denied entry of that because I don't know for whatever reason, no, they, according to them, during the assessment, just because there is still going firefight and it will be more wiser or dangerously to come inside, no. But that not hamper our really intention, no, to make a decision to just go to another evacuation center and do our job as documenter or documentation team as a part of the whole contingent of humanitarian mission, which is composed of actually near to 400 persons. No? Most of them are voluntary from Mindanao itself.
Okay. Would you tell us what goods did you deliver to these areas?
Yes, there is a team, there is a for relief mission, one team, psychosocial, medical mission, and for us, which we belong, we choose the documentation since we don't have a capability to bring relief and there are only for documentation so that by then when we report to University of the Philippines, we could share our experience and perhaps to sway or engage the University of the Philippines to really come into it and at least make a stand or a decision of what we can contribute as a community or a UP community.
Yes, very good. You know, with so many cars parked in your parking lots, then you can generate a lot. But anyway, that's on the lighter side. Gani, coming from all-out peace movement, and you also visited the area, no? Would you care to tell us your observations?
Yeah, we just arrived from what we call a solidarity and peace mission to Marawi City. And there are about 70 individuals, mostly from CSOs and religious groups who were part of this mission. And we visited mostly evacuation centers based in Iligan and CDO and Cagayan de Oro. And we engaged them, the evacuees, in a dialogue, basically conversations, and asking them what about their needs, and if those needs are actually being delivered by concerned government agencies. So we believe that there are still stories waiting to be told to the public, to the general public, especially now that there are, I think, around 300,000, more than, according to the SWD, more than 300,000 evacuees, internally displaced persons, based in Iligan and Cagayan de Oro. But for civil society organizations like the All Out Peace Movement, the Mindanao Peace Weavers, what happened in Marawi was actually a result, no, of consecutive failures, maybe collective failure of a nation, of previous governments to really address the root causes of Mindanao insurgency. So this is not just about combating terrorism. This is not only about capturing Hapilon. This is not only about counting body bags in times of conflict. This is also about addressing the root causes of conflict, addressing the Bangsamoro question, and of course, it would take time, no? We have this peace process, but the conflict in Marawi is actually not new. the public has witnessed these types of conflict years and years ago during ERAP's declaration of all-out war in Mindanao. It happened from Marcos era, and then ERAP, and then the 2008 MOAD debacle. So we believe that it's high time, and we also appeal to our friends in the media to highlight the humanitarian phase of war. We talked during our peace mission. We talked even to JTF, the Joint Task Force Marawi, and to their spokesperson, Joar Herrera. And they said that they will pursue Maute and ISIS till last man standing. So, this is really a war of attrition that we're in. The end goal is to really finish off other camp. Of course, we have to stand in solidarity with the peoples of Marawi, especially in this trying period. But we believe also that martial law, as what Professor has said, may also aggravate the already dismal condition of the peoples of Marawi. In Iligan, you can actually feel the martial law implementation with checkpoints everywhere in Iligan. And we were with Ranao Rescue Team, if you know Samira Gutok, previously a member of the Bangsamoro Transition Commission. So, we in the CSOs believe that now is the time to address, because after that trip, actually there are more questions than answers. So, we have Marwan before, and now we have Hapilon. So it's actually a cyclical thing that we must address as a nation, as peoples.
Thank you, Gani. Joe, do you think the government will ever be successful in, getting rid of the Maute? Because they say that even the MILF acknowledged that for every MILF fighter they had, the kids, the children would like to pursue the career of their fathers. How different is the Maute from the MILF and the MNLF?
From a historical standpoint, it's these are recurring episodes in Mindanao. I could even go earlier than martial law. You already had Kamlon in the 1950s. Yes, there are various threads and nuances to the issues in Mindanao, foremost of which would be the secessionist movement there. There's also the contradictions within many Muslim communities when it comes to their relationship with their political leaders. That, for example, can add to the explanation, to the what Gani was talking about, that there are certain failures, and all of these create breeding ground for rebellion. The element of foreign extremists is that they ride on existing contradictions in a given community or society or what have you. But the specificities of the and context of the contradictions within the, I'm sounding like a professor now, no? Within the, God, there's so much jargon in this world. The conditions, the context, the social context prevails always. So sa madaling salita, what I'm trying to say here is this. Madaling sabihin that ISIS, before it was Al-Qaeda, tapos ngayon ISIS, ISIL naman ngayon, no? Madaling sabihin na nandito sila, they're going to spread like wildfire. But no, there's already an existing problem. And sometimes, even in the absence of external forces, the problems remain, yes, it's possible. I mean, the Maute gunmen might even oblige the AFP there in terms of making themselves die to the last man, because that's what they've been doing for the past month. Their losses are very high. It remains doubtful if Maute will survive this in the same quality as it had prior to the operations. But the thing is that if it goes and you don't solve whatever social problems that there are there, because remember, even the PNP was saying that there were other groups joining. So it's like, for me, I'm not really totally sold on the ISIL thingy. More on, you really have to understand what's going on there. What are the contradictions in Maranao society, Maguindanao society, and so on and so forth. Then if you understand that, then you will put a cap to that. You will engage, for example, the Maranao culture is a very vibrant culture. On one hand, yes, you have Maote, but on the other hand, you have a lot of accomplished people there. Okay?
Okay. Yeah. I'd like to ask the good professor and, of course, Joe, is it just purely coincidental that the poor, impoverished people reside in areas where there are separatists and extremists, and at the same time, it is in these areas where political dynasties thrive? Is it coincidental or is it a fact?
I think that is actually a result of a structure which is, reinforced, even reproduced, this kind of relations. So you would have poor people actually being given hope, by groups who actually claim that someday life will be better. In fact, I would like to ask the good historian here, because I'm actually a little bit bothered about, he talked about this kind of siege spreading. And we know that there are already evacuees in Iligan and in some parts. And we also know that they are being people in Iligan and Cagayan de Oro are being subjected to searches and checkpoints, etc. And they would, oblige. But we also know that there would be a threshold. There's a threshold to this, right? People wouldn't always be comfortable about, being, parang suspicious, etc. So, if this happens, to whom would these people who are being deemed as suspicious, identify? Would they identify to the police who are supposed to bring in peace? Or would they identify to so-called terrorists with whom they share a belief, with whom they share this historical minoritization?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so I think that's a question that we should all address, and we don't know the answer to. Kasi pag sinabi mong maute terrorist, it's very simple.
Somebody's terrorist may be somebody else's freedom fighter, right? Yes, sir.
The thing is, doesn't have to be terrorist at all. It can just be any other armed organization there. It can be a cult for all intents and purposes. But historically, if you have a situation like that, you have displaced people who have been uprooted from their communities. They are packed into certain areas. They face that type of environment. Then it is quite likely that they do become breeding, that the areas that they're in become breeding grounds, which is why it is very important that while we talk about the situation in Marawi, we should always also make sure that there is an effective, efficient, proactive, if you use those terms, rehabilitation effort being done at the same time. It's very clear, for example, in the case of martial law, that the bastonero there, if you use the term, is Lorenzana, Secretary Lorenzana. But in the rehabilitation, in the relief efforts, and so on and so forth, who is the bastonero there? Okay, who can?
So as of now, we don't have anyone to point to.
I don't know, but they can answer that.
When you delivered the goods, were you able to talk to people who would? Yes, Professor. Yeah.
Yes, actually, we interviewed several people. Actually, we contributed 25 interviewees during the compilation. And there is really a significant, what do you call this, reklamo na tao, ng mga evacuee, no? Particularly doon sa mga, kasi we went to Turil, which is a unregistered evacuation center, ano. And nagkaroon lang sila ng doon ng relief when the humanitarian international national commission went there, no, together with medical, social, and for ourselves, our documentation. That is the one with the Ma'am Sarah is talking about. They share one faucet, no? So that, sabi nga may malakas pa ihi. And what they do is that to augment the need for the water, they will have to travel to the other side of the road by foot, no? Yun ay isang nakakasipayo sa kanilang sitwasyon, ano? Tapos, there is no electricity, no? During kasi when we went there, actually we are invited for do yung Ramadan, which is the start of Ramadan, I think. And inabot kami ng gabi ron, and the only source ng kanilang light yung mga ilang mga solar powered na bulb, no? So that ang ginawa na lang during yung mga sasakyan, sinindihan na lang yung headlight para mag-go on lang yung programa. Na inulan naman later on, so we will have to evacuate na rin.
On this particular refugee evacuation center, how many families are there?
Yes, according to one of their leader there, and also yung na-interview namin, there are at least 400 families sharing one building, which is tatlong palapag naman, 3 floors, third floor na, no?
Okay, so how about the data of children and women na nandun?
Well, sad to say, no, we don't have that data because we are only focused on kung ano yung mga kanilang mga nararanasan. No? Actually, we are looking for more traumatic experience, no, when actually did that in Pendalonan, which according to the interview, just when they left their home, no, kitang-kita nilang sumabog yung kanilang bahay. And that is isang bagay din yung kanilang how would they, paano sila babalik doon kung meron pa ba silang kabuhayan, if they still have to left to be to recount to their economic status, etc. And tingnan po natin yung mga estudyante, no, and up to now, no, I don't know, no, after na the Undersecretary Prospero our colleague in UP, Topoy de Vera, yes, eventually, according to him, just last week, no, meron daw siyang ginagawa na, para tanggapin yan, no. So wala pa tayong report kung yung na-hamper na pag-aaral ng mga bata ay nagbalik na ba sa normal, ano? From college level, high school, and of course doon sa elementary level, no, sa mga evacuee, na parang napaka-imposible sa amin, not unless na they will do talagang tulong talaga. They will have to build even na yung tent lang as temporary na paaralan o school for them just to accommodate and to ensure na tuloy-tuloy mga pag-aaral. No? Kasi on our own, sa opinion namin, mahalaga ito para maging panatag din ang loob ng mga kabataan natin, particularly mga kabataan.
Yeah, what we do in Bicol whenever Mayon volcano would erupt is the evacuation will be in government schools, but classes will have to go on to keep the children busy at the same time and dissociate them from whatever tragedy that they may think has come to them. No? So it's just an approach. Probably in Marawi, in your experience, the problem was very limited space, so many people. And we don't even identify who these people are unless we rely on government. Okay. I know we have a lot of questions from our colleagues from the media. Please approach the microphone. Let's start with the lady, a good friend and colleague. But for our guests, please introduce yourself. We also invite Miss Lee of China Central Television to join us in asking questions. Yes, please.
Good morning po, Cecil Ardizabal from CNN Philippines. Yesterday, there was ceasefire in Marawi, and I understand the government sent emissaries to talk to the Mautes. Pero they continued shooting yesterday. May mga natamaan yata mga emissaries. I think for Mr. Custodio, how would you describe the situation based on history? What do you think did the government do in the past administrations, and how can we better handle the situation in talking, for example, to terrorists like the Mautes so that we can avoid the same situation? And probably to Professor Raymundo, how would you describe situations like that? While there was ongoing truce and then, yun.
So anyway, ako na. Oh no, the problem is with many, for example, the Mautes, that it's very difficult. Apparently, it's very difficult to talk with them, especially in a situation where much fighting has happened. I would assume that within the Maute group by now there is a disruption of command and control. Okay, because the government military pressure is very relentless. So you may be talking to one unit there and not know that the other unit has no idea what's going on, and then shooting continues. I'm not even inputting here the fact that they seem to want to shoot always. Okay, and then they seem to be very motivated to go down fighting. So that's why it's very complicated. There is no clear-cut way to deal with them in terms of if you have ceasefire suspension of fighting, will they follow? It doesn't always work. Throughout history, we've had so many incidents of ceasefire violations, you know. Like, for example, 72 years ago in the Battle of Manila, where we are standing right now. Malate Church is just over there. That was the scene of heavy fighting during the Battle of Manila. There were many instances that the Americans and Filipino guerrillas would try to talk with the Japanese to stop firing. The Japanese would appear to comply. Then next thing you know, when the Americans and Filipinos are outside exposing themselves, firing goes on again, trying to kill the Filipinos and American soldiers coming from the Japanese side. So again, it's a very difficult thing. There's really no clear cut. Given, however, what happened in Marawi, it appears that the only solution is to root out every single Marawi nest, a gunman nest in that city, to clear it, to totally clear it. In terms of what is to be done afterwards, I leave it again to this, to my partners here, that oft-abused term, partners.
Yes, Professor, your thoughts, please.
It's really difficult to negotiate peace from the top. You really have to be able to unite people from the ground. I think that's what we have seen in all peace pacts worldwide. No? People talk about ceasefire, but then on the ground, war goes on. And as what our historian has told us, this is difficult. But at the same time, from history, we also learn, no? What ended the dictatorship? No? It's not some, signal from the top. It's people power. So I believe in empowering people from the ground. Kaya lang, if there's war, how do you educate people, right? So it's really hard, no? To actually just go follow one path or one solution. I think the military solution might be very limited at this point.
So you're saying po there is parang no concrete solution in the short term. This might really drag on. And then another question is that how do you think the declaration of martial law is helping in, containing the situation?
Well, I don't have a conclusive analysis of the impact of martial law. But for a month, nearly a month now, or 3 weeks, sinasabi nila every day, okay, we are in control. We are in control of the situation. But every day also, from the news, you will read na, hoy, ang daming maute, ang dami pala nilang mga resources, ang dami pala nilang guns, and they're pretty much influential, no? In Marawi. So, yung news, yung developments would actually challenge government's claim that they are in control of the situation. That's, that's one facet of it. The other is that you have this thousands upon thousands of evacuees, no, really living miserable lives since the siege, and despite the declaration of martial law.
Okay. Gani?
Actually, after talking during the dialogue with Joint Task Force Marawi, especially with spokesperson Joar Herrera, and also with General Bautista, who heads the military operations on the ground, they said that the Mautes and ISIS are actually, they have hostages. So the situation on the ground is really difficult, and yeah, it's good that they announced that there was this ceasefire yesterday. But the point is, they also affirmed that a military solution to this situation in Marawi is not the only solution to the problem. The Joint Task Force Marawi affirmed that, but also they said that, yeah, they gonna pursue one by one until last man standing, Maute and ISIS elements. And yeah, I think we have to also know if the martial law, for example, there are a lot of towns in Marawi, Iligan, and in Cagayan de Oro. When we asked Joar Herrera if they have these guidelines on implementing martial law, he said that there is actually no clear guidelines. So what happened was some police detachments, they have their own. They issued their own guidelines on implementing martial law. That's why we're saying that the implementation of martial law is in fact an affront to peace and human rights, especially to those who have experienced martial law up close and personal.
Now, before I acknowledge our colleague, let me just ask the two of you, do you see an unseen hand behind all this? You mentioned EDSA People Power One, where people got empowered, but several Mondays ago, we had somebody talking about the Americans, even before the fall of Marcos, talked to their group and had three important points. Number one, never use violence. Number two, never hurt Marcos. And nobody of them will go to jail. So as early as 1985, the Americans were thinking of getting rid of Marcos, and everything just fall into the proper place. Now with this latest incidents, with the Americans again getting into the show, the Australians offering aid, how do you look at it? Will this not complicate, or do you see an American hand behind all this? Yes. Again? Of course.
No, Trump is there, Trump is a big headache for the Americans right now. I'm not going to say that the Americans of 2017 are the same Americans of the 1980s, okay? Now they're just as confused as we are. Thank God for Trump, because it's so amazing. Now, the thing is that, the thing here is that, given that situation, the Americans are going about it through relationships that they have already established with the Philippine military and the defense sector, okay? And if you look at it, yes, it's a very clearly delineated role that they're doing, okay? It's providing intel support and in Marawi, the Battle of Marawi, basically that, okay? Nothing really new about that, because the Americans have been doing that in coordination with their Philippine counterparts ever since the war on terrorism started in 2001. Marawi, however, you see, that's a problem that I would have if we try to ascribe it to, let's say, the US or whatever, is that, again, it's similar to the ISIL thingy, okay, is that you might, again, get distracted by something external when the internal problem is something you have to address, which I was saying, I think Gani practically perfectly stated, and so with Sarah here that and Felix, by the way, and that we have certain failures happening, okay? And I believe that even if you don't have an external factor, as long as those failures in governance and whatever you have, it's going to be cyclic. And if you don't have an end state in martial law, the problem with martial law is that it is premised on, martial law is always, whatever you do, martial law is premised on a failure of, let's say, civil government, okay? And if you don't have an end state to martial law, then you involve the military and security in activities that will, in the long term, create dissatisfaction even within the ranks.
Okay, very well. Professor, your thoughts?
I agree. I agree with him when he said that it's really the internal element, no, internal contradictions that would be more decisive. Of course, we know the U.S. to be intervening in the different affairs of nation. We've heard of its adaptive approach, or the so-called hybrid wars, to actually implement regime change. No? So we've seen what happened in Ukraine, what's happening in Syria, and so on and so forth. But this is that factor is an external factor and is therefore secondary. No? It feeds into what's happening here. No? So we have to resolve our internal contradictions. No? Basically, we have to resolve our nation, the kind of economy that we have, no, is really, prey to these types of interventions. No? So, yeah.
Okay, all right. Or is it also possible that these politicians, the local politicians, would like to keep the people poor so that they will be dependent on them?
That's one factor. But also we need to take into account the moral question, which
All
I
right.
think he will be very capable of discussing.
Umaayaw na.
Kay Professor Abunda, sir, you have said earlier na yung pong nangyayari ngayon sa Marawi ay dahil doon sa consecutive failures ng nakaraang mga gobyerno sa pagtugon sa, mga problema ng mga Moro. Basically, siguro yung pagkakaroon nila ng sariling autonomiya, sir, no? Yes. So, basically, hindi po ito tungkol sa ideology ng Maute na sila ay maging ally ng ISIS.
Hindi po natin kinukonclude na gano'n, ano? Hindi po natin kinukonclude na gano'n. What we're saying is that to address this radicalism, violent extremism, you have to arrest, you have to resolve the root causes of the problems. And we could start with addressing the Bangsamoro question. We could start as a nation to give primacy to existing peace processes, because there is no way we could resolve this conflict, I mean long term, by just continue fighting and then killing each other. So the conflict actually, if you can recall, for example, the passage of the BBL in the last Congress, it failed. It failed to pass Congress. So radicalism stems from also discontent, and not just discontent, but also our failure not just to recognize, but also to accept that we are a nation of many nations. Islamophobia is still very prevalent. And then you have Islamophobia, you have this terrorist hysteria, and then all these factors are coming in. So the point is, what happened in Marawi highlights, the need for peace, the need for us to institutionalize real peace for the peoples of Mindanao. Not just and I'm not talking only on political lens, but also on socio-economic sphere that we have to address these questions.
Thank you, sir.
Next, from our colleague. Yes, please. Please.
Umaga po. I'd like to ask Professor Custodio, no, kasi this is almost not almost, more than a month na. I don't know how to ask this, pero what do you honestly see yung best option na pwede gawin talaga dito? Like, this is more than a month already, tapos sinasabi ng militar natin na they will really kill up to the last one mouth is standing. So, hanggang we have the resources, hanggang meron isang mountain na nakatayo at buhay, so yun talaga yung best option na kailangan talagang really to end this situation in Marawi now, sir?
Well, first and foremost, don't call me professor. I'm just a mister.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Custodio.
Next is, of course, that's the bombast that we hear now, okay? But realistically, what's going to happen is this. They will continue operations until the last Maote is cleared from Marawi, okay? They will have to address the hostages if they are not secured within the next weeks, okay? That can be a drawn out affair because we all know how hostages suddenly just disappear into nothingness in the island of Mindanao. So those operations will continue. There will be once Marawi is sufficiently cleared. It's another matter how they're going to deal with the Maote in their base camps and in areas south of Marawi, which is in the around the Lake Lanao area, all the way down to there. There may be pressure. There will be definitely pressure there. They have earmarked. The government has said that it has earmarked 20 billion in rehabilitation and what have you. Now it's up to people here in this table to ensure that it is done in a strategic and proactive and effective manner. But there is going to be development. There's going to be budgeted programs. However, the efficiency and effectivity of this will only be done if it is properly consulted and there are coordinations with people on the ground who are who know what is going on. Okay, not to just brush them aside as mga destabilizers or what have you. Okay, we can all learn from this entire, because I think the most important battle right now, because it seems that the actual fighting will last within a foreseeable duration. Okay, I don't see this lasting the entire year. Okay, but within a foreseeable period. But the major battle I'm talking about now is the battle to bring back hope to several 100,000 citizens of or residents of Marawi who have been displaced. Okay, to bring back a semblance of of normalcy to their lives. Okay, to give them the necessary support so that they do not become a source of destabilization. Okay, I think that's a more important thing now. And so I would say that the operations per se would continue. It will be slow, as Gani here has seen, because it's urban warfare. There is no such thing as rapid urban warfare unless you want to demolish the entire city, leave no one standing. And that's not going to happen. So it's going to be a step-by-step process, careful of also the hostages that are there, careful of civilians still trapped in the combat zones. I assume there are around 1,000 or so as of a count that I said, and that is going to impinge on the tempo of operations. But like I said, when they say it's going to be the last Maote standing, the last Maote who is resisting standing, okay? I mean, you can't go into all the Maote territory and try to get, oh, are you a Maote card-carrying member? Oh, thank you very much, bang. No, it's not going to happen like that. Though the effort there is to bring in support for development, okay? And like I said, to repeat, this is where our guests here can contribute a lot to that, okay, for providing policy direction.
But of course, sir, we couldn't start that unless
Kumakapo
really
ka
the
naman sa akin,
situation...
grabe naman. Ano yun?
Pero sir, of course, we couldn't start that unless really the situation on the ground right now, sir, is really very clear and very peaceful now, sir, di ba? So, therefore, we are seeing now like months pa.
Well, I'm not going to second guess. I'm not a military commander. And if I was a military commander, you wouldn't like me as a military commander. But the thing is that, the thing that I'm saying here is that relief efforts happen and should be happening, and they should be happening on an organized manner, okay? Again, policy directions for that should emanate from groups like our guests here and other groups like the ICRC. And like I said, at this point in time, if we don't have the capability, if we invited the Americans and the Australians to provide CGINT and all of this type of operations, I assume that we may perhaps ask the Japanese, who are really experts in abracadabra type of setting up disaster shelters, to come in and provide their expertise so that these resettlement areas will be functioning efficiently, okay? And again, ensuring programs. And these things can happen while the fighting is going on because you're going to be rehabilitating people in the evacuation camps, okay? Giving them the assistance there. Why do you do that? Because you want to stop dissent from occurring. You want to stop dissatisfaction, disgruntled. When people start griping, And at the same time, you want to have a sense of normalcy. So because if you lessen the need for military troops to be engaged on an endless cycle of operations, you can also help the AFP in its in the overall goal to stop even their men from complaining that this thing keeps on going on and on. And we all know what happens when that happens.
Sir, if I may have one last
Please.
lang. Sir, aside from the danger of making this as a template or a precedent to other armed groups in the future sa Mindanao, what could be the worst and long-term impact ho na parang more than a month na ho itong gulo ngayon sa Marawi?
You want the worst case scenario? You want worst case scenario? Really?
Yes, kasi sir, ang isang sinasabi kasi ng fear ng military, pag lalong tumatagal, nagagalit na yung mga Maranao actually.
Oh yeah, that's why importante ang development, okay? Even if the combat goes on, because the combat is dictated by the Maute gunmen and their affiliate resistance, okay? If they don't want to surrender, you can't do anything. You really have to root them out, okay? But however, there are the ways to minimize Maranao is, for example, development. Second is also communications. Yung comms mo, medyo ayusin yung comms. Wag masyadong magbitiw ng mga happy words, Kasi nambubulabog din
So,
yung
hindi
mga...
pwede yung cartoons na martial law is the best answer.
I suppressed that from my consciousness already. The thing here is that, communications is a very important tool, and as much as possible, in the past few weeks, we have seen some communications that have been a bit difficult, to listen to, very bombastic statements, or you even have some people cash in on the situation ride on the situation by using it as a tool for political propaganda. Okay, thank you very much for that. So the thing here is that when you engage in that, instead of addressing what is, you give an impression of confusion on the top. Okay, so that's not also good. So it really requires a lot of effort, and the effort should be a partnership between the government and listening again to people like here. Who can, not me, them, okay? Who can provide policy guidance, okay? Don't ask anything anymore.
Okay? All right.
Thank you.
What difference would it make? Some years ago, whenever there was a kidnapping in Basilan and Sulu, the MNLF would get a call from someone identified with Muammar Gaddafi and say, you stop this foolishness. And the poor fellow would be released, unharmed most of the time. With nobody calling them today, do you think kanya-kanyang kayod na ito? Mr. Custodio? Hindi. May historical perspective eh. Yung may tumatawag, may big brother somewhere, no?
Well, at that time, because of the fact that there was actually a relationship, okay, up until Gaddafi got himself unfortunately strapped into a car, and paraded down the streets of that town he was caught in. Okay, so now you don't have the. So what do you do right now? Okay, there are so many things that it's really very difficult right now because in a hostage situation, the hostages get transferred from one group to another. Okay, so the longer your hostage situation goes on, because I don't think anybody knows where anybody know where the priest is now? Nobody knows where the priest is also, right? The celebrated priest. So for all we know, intents and purposes, especially since the military said that they suspect collusion between the Maute gunmen and the BIFF, okay? And it's not just them, because we're just looking at them, but we all know that there are a lot of private armed groups also in Mindanao, the so-called PAGs, which the military has to contend with, and which I think the people here also are very much aware of, and they also play along with they ride on all of the problems that happen. And in that situation, it really very big. It really is important, in the long term, to address what they're talking about, so that you can diminish the number of groups, and you have people supporting the government in terms of finding or helping in hostage release. Because the problem, however, is that in many areas, hostage taking has turned into some sort of cottage industry.
Okay. It is a cottage industry, please.
Yes, a couple of questions. First addressed, not you. No, but the first concern is this. I've been talking with one of the persons who have been in Mindanao for the last 40 years. And his point of view as far as the Maute group is concerned is, it's the religious conviction to establish a caliphate in the entire Southeast Asian region based in the Philippines. And that's the reason why the Maute gets a lot of funds, not only through narco-politics, but also through finances from outside. That's one angle. But the other angle relative to that would be internal point of the distinctions or different denominations and sects among Muslims. So what's your take on this? Second, as far as the humanitarian mission is concerned, you have visited evacuation centers, and it's very noticeable in media, mainstream, and even the social media, that most of the evacuation centers are filled with women and children. Where are the men? So those are two questions.
Okay. Would anybody would like to?
Caliphate, religious conviction na caliphate. So whether there's a military rule or not, they are going to establish a caliphate in Mindanao. The Southeast Asian region based in Mindanao. That's one reading. What's your take about it?
I'll just talk about the caliphate itself.
Sure.
It's easier said than done.
Oh.
Okay, they want to replicate what happened
Let's
in the
say
Levant.
in Syria or
Yeah,
Iran.
but
Yes.
it's like Joma Sison and Bernabe Buscaino wanting to replicate Yunnan.
Yes.
If you remember that,
Yes,
you remember
the
that. you
Communist
were-
Party,
I
yeah.
was very
Okay.
young then.
Yeah.
So the thing is that they tried to do it in northern Luzon, right? And they got their asses whipped by the military, because major thing in an island is you don't have a place to escape. So if you put yourself into a clearly defined area. You are targeted by the military, and then your cadres immediately get killed. Okay, but in the case of 1970s, the NPA did that. What happened was that they were beaten back and blue by the military in that offensive in Isabela, and they scattered. That's why we had all these fronts created.
So you're
by this-
saying
so, but the thing here is that it's different in the case of the Maute. Okay, you're dealing with a lot of mixtures
Factors.
factions there and so on and so forth. Some of them may appear to like the caliphate idea, but there's an income-generating motivation also behind it, okay? Because easy money is easy money.
You're saying drugs
Not drugs, but even the infusion of funds and
from
support
outside, yes.
from
okay.
outside.
Yes.
That is what I was saying, that in many instances, when foreign terrorists come here, they have difficulty in winning over the local
Locals.
population. And sometimes they realize that the converts that they're trying to, there's adherents, majority get sucked into what's going on again. The system sucks them up. That's why I was saying that the best example is Abu Sayyaf, that they started out with all these high hopes of, and all these things, this caliphate, we heard about that 20 years
Yes,
ago
yeah,
already.
yeah.
Okay? And then now what's Abu Sayyaf doing? It's major income generating. Many of its units are doing cottage industry kidnapping and so on. And where is the caliphate that they were saying during their time? It never happened, okay? So Marawi, the Maute, because remember the Maute, it's a geographically confined unit. It's not everywhere. You will not, it's a family. That's why it's called Maute. It's like Saudi Arabia, no?
Family. Okay.
That's as far as your take is concerned. But the second question, maybe related to the rest, would be in your visit to the different evacuation centers.
Where were the men?
Yes, where are the men? And how are the men vis-a-vis the children and the women?
Okay. Well, actually, I was only reading through the documentation. So, maraming mga lalaki doon and they're helping out, no? And they're with their women. And one very striking data is that the men they have interviewed, ang sinasabi nila are they've been traumatized by two things. First, the aerial bombardments. And they actually associate the aerial bombardments with martial law. No? So that's why they're negative about martial law as well. And then number two, it's the rape joke, no, na sinabi nung mga, in one evacuation center, meron daw pumunta doon mga AFP and they were saying, may mga house rules, no, and so we were being oriented, etc. And then, pag hindi kayo sumunod, re-rape namin kayo. No? It was supposed to be a joke. But then, the men were very... Yeah, we all know that. The men were actually talking about how they fear for their wives and their daughters and they don't find it funny. No? So yun yung isa sa mga
No, the
concerns
point
din nila.
is, where are the men? What are they doing? Maybe you've interviewed a few, but comparatively speaking, there are more women and children than the men.
Okay, because in Marawi culture, no, even in Moro culture, the men are supposed to protect the household. So
you're saying
karamihan doon
they're
sa
in the
mga
houses.
husbands remained in Marawi. Significant number of men remain in Marawi because they were supposed to protect their households. And I could surmise it's because it is not in their practice, for example, to put their money in the banks. No, they don't believe in that. No. So, meron din sila mga bangko. So, yung mga properties nila nandoon. So, it's also cultural. It's a cultural thing for them to remain and protect the households.
But, okay, different matters.
Yeah. If I may add, during our visit to Iligan, evacuation centers, we talked actually mostly to ustads. So these are men, and then they actually explained to us the situation in Marawi, and even said that what happened in Marawi is actually was not a battle between Christianity or Islam. And he said that this is a result of us people not being kind to one another.
During the Mayon eruption years ago, it is the men who were left behind. Women and children were in evacuation centers. And it was learned that most women returned to their homes in the wee hours of the morning. And the reason was for them to feed the pigs. It was later found out that the pigs that were fed were boars. Okay? All right. Okay? It's not a joke. It is an experience in Bicol. Yes, please. Yes.
Morning, sir. Sir, Ma'am Sherry Ann Torres, ABS-CBN. Mr. Custodio, you first and then the others later. Let me just follow up the question of SOLA, of GMA 7. In our history, kasi we have this series of, a number of martial law declaration, aside from Marcos, we have the Arroyo administration. And you mentioned something about the guerrilla warfare, which was also mentioned by Senator Lacson in one of our interviews. Historically speaking, how long does it really take for such an operation to conclude? Does it really take months or generations, like what happened during the Marcos administration?
You're talking about, the Battle of Marawi is, because it's urban in nature, it takes long. Again, as going back to what Gani was saying a while ago, clearing of houses takes several days, okay? You have buildings also, you have interconnected or supporting sniper fire, okay? So one unit goes there, tries to suppress a fighter, a sniper, and then next thing you know, that unit gets pinned down by another sniper in another building, okay? So those are the things, and that takes time, okay? That really takes time. That's why, again, it's very important to have the necessary support for everybody who is displaced. Am I going to say that there is such a... I'm going to kill it. Is there a way to say that this should happen? As you notice that you do not cite timetables for those things. Why? Because if you cite a timetable, the enemy is really going to make sure you do not achieve your timetable, okay? You cannot really cite a timetable for such military operations. But those types of operations do have a life of their own, a lifespan of their own. They tend to finish. And then as we can see, eventually, slowly by slowly, the city is getting cleared. Now, on that matter, you would see Marawi eventually being cleared. Now, that is your statement on how long the operations will take. Eventually, it will be cleared. I'm not going to say it's going to happen in the next century or in a generation, but eventually it will be cleared. I'm not going to say maybe several more weeks or what have you. But within that foreseeable near-term future, it is going to be cleared. Because remember, you might say that, okay, it's cleared already prematurely. You want it clear to be cleared, you say it's cleared, then you have Popoy De Vero saying you can all go back to school, no? Or DepEd, then suddenly a kid gets hit by sniper fire. You know, because these groups are small, it's very difficult to locate. But eventually it will be cleared. But that's only your question on what we are talking here about also is the aspect of martial law. Okay, my answer there was that it would have to have a good end state. Okay, it has to have a proper end state. Okay, you cannot have a prolonged martial law. Why? Because you do not want to get the military thinking that the civilian government is totally irrelevant, because that is the premise of any martial law. You only use martial law to break opposition. When you say opposition, hindi political, ha? Yung armed opposition to you. You have to break it. Okay, and then through that you use development. It's a left-hand, right-hand thingy. Okay, in order to address already using it in the ideal world, you use that to address social problems so that it does not repeat. Okay, but if you extend it on and on and on and on and on, you risk tiring also the military, and the military does not like to get tired. We do not want the military tired, because whenever a military gets tired, it starts griping, and we don't like military men griping also.
Yeah, very well.
Just one follow-up. Come June 30, the president will be marking his first year in office. And can you, sir, as long as our other guests, can I have your views about on how do you assess the president's performance with respect to your expertise, to your field? Military, humanitarian aspect. How did the president fare during his first year in office? Thank you.
I think to his credit, no, to his credit, the president, Digong, actually, being from Mindanao, is good at pursuing, this peace process. not only with the Bangsamoro, but also with the Reds. Not only with the Reds, but also with other factions of the Reds. That's why there are 5 peace tables right now. So I think the president can get a good grade on that aspect. But with respect to implementation, for example, of martial law and of course this EJK issue, I mean, by math, mas marami ang patay sa EJK kaysa sa Marawi incident. But the interest of the public with regards to this EJK is now waning. So it's like telling us that, okay, it's normal to, killing is becoming a normal thing. So, and this is very dangerous. It is dangerous because your future institutions, your future democratic institutions may weaken. It may weaken the existing democratic processes and institutions. And yeah, that's it.
Okay. So, labas dun sa usapin ng Marawi, no? Yung assessment natin kay Presidente Digo, no? So, usapin naman po bilang kawani, no? Ng pamahalaan, all workers unity, no? Yun, natin pa rin hinihintay yung kasagutan, no? Yung pagpapatupad talaga ng pagtatapos sa mga ENDU, yung contractualization, ano? Kasi mukhang iniikutan lang ito ng dole order, ano? Tapos, yun pa, yung ating basa sa kanya, dapat manatili siya, tigasan niya kung talagang maninindigan siya, yung independent foreign policy. Naniniwala ang All Workers Unity, ang All Workers Alliance, no? Ang ugat ng lahat ng kaguluhan na ito, walang iba kundi mga instigation lang ito, bati sa kasaysayan ng mga nangyayari sa labas ng bansa, no? Ng mga naganap na. Ito ay instigation lamang ng gawa-gawan ligalig, no? So sa usapin po ng pag-hampered sa kanyang itinutulak, no? Kung titignan nyo nga po, Russia, no? Nanggaling siya sa Russia, no? Nandun sana siya pero walang kahumpay-humpay. Pinabalik siya rito because of that incident, yung Marawi Sig nga po na, no? Ano po yung bilang ano? At tinitignan dito ng All Workers Unity, no? Bilang hudyat sa kanya na babala sa kanya kung sa ano siyempre bilang aktivista naman babanggitin natin ano yung kanyang tagapagpatupad ng CIA which is ang US, no, na babala sa kanya ito na hindi siya pwedeng lumayo sa akin. Otherwise, you better know kung saan ka pupunta. Which is siyempre nakaambang military junta o kudita.
Yeah. So para palang ano yan, magpapasko, you better watch out. You better not cry.
I agree that President Duterte started right by saying that he wants peace to be his legacy. But I've been wondering why it is so easy to sabotage the peace talks. No? Last year, nung SONA niya, biglang, okay, he was so angry about this encounter and then suddenly, no more, no? Lift the ceasefire and then all-out war na, So meron, on the one hand, you have this package and it's promising. But on the other hand, it seems that it is so easy to distract him away from it, you see. But there's this package and we want to pursue it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess every president started on the right foot, but they ended up with the wrong foot, no?
But I think President Duterte, I haven't heard, tatlong presidente pa lang yung naabutan ko. Or no, from Marcos. Wala na ako kay
Garcia.
Marcos. Pero, wala pa. I think, narinig ko lang or nabasa ko lang, no? Si President Duterte would have his stand on the Moro question is right on. But then, bakit nag-all-out war sa Mindanao, no? Bakit nangyayari to? Bakit nagkaroon ng siege? And then, ang sagot agad, martial law. So there seems to be a gap between theory and practice. No?
Okay. So would you say that he is just being consistent with his inconsistencies like the previous leaders?
Well, at the moment, yes, but we still have 5 more years, so that can still be improved.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, please.
Hi, other guests. Good morning. My name is Lily. I'm from China Central Television. So I've been here for 1 month. Philippines has left me a very good impression. It's a lovely country for me, only if there's no terrorism. So I want to know if the ISIS group is behind the threat of terrorism in Marawi city, in Mindanao. Then why they choose Philippines, not other countries?
So this is not really a direct answer to that question, but the people, at least the evacuees from Marawi, they're reporting that on May 23, when the Maute introduced themselves to them in the town center, they were wearing black and naka-maskara, and then the person who was talking, supposedly the mass leader, was without a mask. But never did they hear from any of them that they're ISIS. The only way that they were able to relate ISIS with the Maute siege is when they hear it from media, no, from television. But the Maute themselves never identified themselves as ISIS. But that does not, of course, answer your question. I'm just talking about how people from the ground define, or I'm talking about their impressions.
Okay, so you mean the Maute group, the relationship between Maute group and ISIS is still under verifying, right?
I cannot tell, but if I were ISIS, I would look at Maute and say, maybe I want to recruit you. Or, yeah.
I see, okay. But the AFP has already said there are maybe 89 terrorists, the militants from foreign countries. Yeah, Mr. Custodio.
Why did they come to the Philippines? Okay, you see the other countries like Indonesia, Malaysia, and Vietnam, they are consolidated as national state entities. Okay, the Philippines has a slight consolidation problem, very slight. Like we have large areas not under the control of the Philippine government, but under, let's say, rebel or private armed groups. And ergo a challenge to central authority, okay, or even local authority or what have you. And in that situation, it becomes conducive, it becomes attractive for non-state elements like terrorists, or to try to see if they can cash in on what's going on in the southern part of the Philippines, okay? Like I said a while ago, if there's an intention, they've been trying to, but as shown by our partners again here in the table, that you may have a situation where only a core group might have an understanding of what exactly this caliphate is all about, but the rank and file no, they just really don't know, But the reason why they joined is because of an existing social justice problem. Okay, a social inequity problem is the reason why they joined, not because I want to be the first general of this particular place, and then I will be subordinate to the caliph who is the whatever. They don't do that. It's like, okay, I'm hungry, I have problems with a local government person or what have you, and me now join because you're a nice alternative and you pay good money. And again, money is also a very big motivator in some of the aspects, because you recruit armed groups also. You recruit armed groups, and many of these armed groups that you recruit are also engaged in some sort of criminal activity of their own. So again, it's very important. Maybe after the Battle of Marawi is finished, you will have a government committee to address, a commission that investigates what went on, what happened. Very objective in composition, drawing in government and private and subject matter experts and so on and so forth, and to address to investigate what happened. It's very similar to other countries. When they have something of this magnitude that happens, you have a government commission that investigates. And maybe through that, we will see exactly what was the extent, when everything, the smoke clears, what was the extent really of foreign terrorists? What was the extent of local politics here? And how do we address all of this?
Thank you, thank you. Follow up. Since the Marawi crisis has been lasted for more than 1 month, so and this question we have discussed a lot, but still I want to, if one of you can give me some general idea of what are the impact and the influence of the Marawi crisis, both in short term and long term to your country.
I think, as I have said, long term, it has some worrying implications to, one, the peace process itself. Because again, we are in a situation, in a conflict situation, but we have this peace process. So it's like we're talking peace, but we have the gun. So that's the situation.
Okay. It's in long term, short term?
Short term, of course, we have to help each other as a nation to address this issue of humanitarian crisis in Marawi. Actually, right after our mission last week, if you're monitoring media reports, there was this attack again, but this time by the BIFF in Cotabat, in Bikawayan. We don't know if it's a sympathy attack. We're not privy to any intelligence by the military. But what we can say is, again, it's high time that we have to address this problem of Bangsamoro, and that must include addressing the historical injustices committed against all peoples of Mindanao, not just the Bangsamoro, but also to other, like the indigenous peoples of Mindanao. So we should go beyond slogans. The government should go beyond its usual rhetoric of this peace process must be inclusive. But inclusivity must be defined beyond token participation by each and one of stakeholders in Mindanao. Inclusivity must also include the just cause of each groups, the right to self-determination struggles of the Bangsamoro, and the right to self-determination struggles of indigenous peoples in Mindanao.
Thank you so much. One more question, sorry. There's a rumor, I'm not sure it's a rumor or it's true, but there's a leakage of fire from AFP or from PNP. Yeah, it is said maybe on the 30th of June, there will be an attack again, some big explosion in some public places such as airport or shopping mall. Yeah. Is it true or is it just a rumor? And if it's true, so what actions have government do to deal with this? Yeah, Mr. Custodio.
If it's true, they would have been caught by now. If it's true, okay? Meaning to say you cannot really determine information like that. That is why that caused a controversy in the PNP, and I think I don't know if I'm correct, they suspended the person who released that and what have you, or gave him some disciplinary action or what have you, because you don't you don't first make something like that without verifiable, actionable intelligence, okay? That being said, nobody can really predict when you can usually identify a group that may be coming in. But the thing here is that it shows also the the fear that has permeated within many people in this country regarding the possible threat of terrorist attack. Okay, I'm not saying that it's not going to happen, but but in a situation in the Philippines where everything is so fluid, okay, that we may assume nothing's going to happen, and then suddenly something happens. Like, whoever thought that thing would happen in Marawi, okay? Whoever thought that it would last this long? So in that sense, it still is. It still requires a bit of situational awareness from people to be careful in what even they do. Careful also in the information that they give out. And but most importantly of all, it also calls upon the government to be more circumspect also in its declarations, okay? Because sometimes that also adds to the fear, okay? Because this is the Philippines, the land where there's always a group that's going to take advantage of something.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. We have more questions? Yes.
Simple lang tayo. Pat Santos po, Tribune. Sa nangyayari, what is prevailing situation now is Marawi, then North Cotabato, then some NPA attacks sa Norte. What do you think is the scenario, despite the peace process na, is it working or let's forget it and let's fight one another kung sino matira or civil war at the worst scenario?
Mukhang propeta ng kadiliman yung nagtatanong, ano? Parang talagang...
I think we should look at the peace process not as a sprint but as a marathon. So it requires energy, more patience on the part of the government, being the implementer of the peace process, and on the part of other parties in dialogue. Yeah. Of course, we have to be aware of what we call the spoilers of peace process, and we have to be consistently cautioned about their movements. And but to conclude that these events, this Marawi crisis, this BIFF attack in Cotabato has something to do with the peace process. We don't know yet, but what we know is that there are peace processes, and we as a nation should put all hands on deck if we are to arrest these perennial problems of insurgency in Mindanao.
All right. Okay, more questions? Ito, terorista to.
Magandang umaga po, Linggoy ng Opinion. My question would be, what do you call it? I hope you can answer it, but it's a bit old. Rather than talk about the problems today, my question is, why is it that aside from the bandit leader Camlon in the 1950s in Sulu, the 1950s, 60s, and until the middle of the 60s, 65, before Jabida, there was relative peace in Mindanao. That's my first question. Second, one of the reasons why Mindanao was not colonized and Christianized fully by the Spaniards was that every time that we had threats in the north, from Limahong, Cosinga, the Dutch, or the British, the colonization of Mindanao would stall, and the Spanish colonial government would even withdraw troops from Zamboanga, Sulu, etc., to defend Luzon. Now, my question is that relatively, after the British conquest of Manila in 1762 to 1765, there were not too many external threats until the United States came in 1898. Why was Spain not able to colonize and Christianize more thoroughly than it did in that period? So that's my second question. The first was...
Why was there
it-
relative peace after Kamlon until the Jabi the thing?
Sometimes you can interpret, well, for starters, when you talk about the Muslim situation or Muslim history, there being a more how do you call this? The society, their communities were more politically advanced than the communities that were residing in the Visayas and Mindanao in terms of cohesion, in terms of political control, and also in terms of military capabilities. So it was only in the 19th century, because of technology, that the Spaniards were able to suppress the resistance to them, or it wasn't actually resistance, it's more like their conflict with the Muslims in Mindanao. And that was because of, like I said, technological development, machine guns, and also all these gunboats and so on and so forth, steam-powered gunboats, which made travel response times faster. But since it happened so late in the Spanish colonial period, 1880s, if I'm correct, when the Sulu archipelago was, the Sultanate of Sulu was, I think, defeated at that time in battle. A few years later, you would have the arrival of the Americans, Philippine Revolution arrival. So the Spaniards were not able to consolidate their rule. It took the Americans several decades to suppress the Muslim uprising. That's why we had Muslim resistance. That's why we had Black John Pershing and so on and so forth. Okay, summa total, what does this mean? That is why there's very strong sense of Muslim nationalism. That explains it. That is why in the 1930s there was a petition from the Muslims to not include, from Muslim personalities to not include their Muslim areas in the Commonwealth, the proposed Commonwealth. But that was thumbed down, if I'm correct, by Quezon, if I'm correct. Yung lolo ni Manolo. Tapos ano to, and because of that, by virtue of that act, they were incorporated into the Philippines. Okay. Now, when we talk about relative quiet, we are not exactly sure if there really was a relative quiet or if there was something simmering that would just blow up eventually. Okay. Because Kamlon, you had Kamlon in the 1950s, that's what you had Satag. Then, however, there was also a rise in the Muslim intelligentsia of nationalism, for Muslim nationalism. Eventually, that would have found, all it needed was a spark, and the spark was provided by the incident in Corregidor. Okay, that was a spark that they needed. And then the height of the Muslim rebellion was in the early 1970s when martial law was declared. And that was that was the first time you had large-scale fighting in towns and cities in Mindanao, of which I think that's one of the reasons why it's very difficult for the military to engage the Maute in many of the buildings, because they built their buildings strong because of the fighting that was going on before. So that being said, it was something that was inevitable. You know? It's like, for example, saying that in Yugoslavia, things were so quiet during Tito's time. Well, because Tito was, had a grip. Then things just exploded. And then no more Yugoslavia. If people want about worst case scenarios, I always say that as a historian, I'm a very pessimistic person because historians are naturally pessimistic. We're not political scientists or sociologists who like to paint things happily, No, we see human tragedy every time, okay? The worst case scenario for the Philippines is Yugoslavia. We disintegrate, okay, in the long term. But especially if the national authorities do not find a way, to consolidate this country. That's basically what I'm saying here.
Follow-up question. In 1972, when martial law was declared, the strength of the armed forces of the Philippines, including the Philippine Constabulary, was about 50,000 to 60,000. The police were not yet integrated, meaning to say that if local officials would be sympathetic with the MNLF at that time, they would tend to bring their police forces, or at least the police forces would be neutralized. Today, the PNP is about 150,000, and the armed forces is about 120,000. How many days did it? Well, I know that it took Lieutenant Colonel Salvador Mison 7 days to recapture Jolo in February 4 to 11 of 1974. It took the Noynoy administration less than a month to recapture the portions of Zamboanga, of the Zamboanga siege. No? In Marawi, because of the low speed of the internet, I have not yet found out how many days it took to recapture Marawi in October, from October 21, 1972. No? In the case of Cotabato City, in February of 1973, Cotabato City was not captured, but almost the entire Cotabato, the old Cotabato province, no, was overrun by the MNLF. And from 2 battalions, 1 PC and 1 army in 1972-73, after 1 year, there was something like 30 battalions employed in Cotabato. Now, my question is, how come it's taking so long now? Are the Maute fighters much better than the MNLF fighters of 1972, 73, and 74?
Well, the thing is that we're talking about changing times and appreciations, okay? I did mention earlier that the AFP has undergone, since 1986, a lot of security sector reform. Yes, there are there are still a number of individuals within who have been accused of human rights violations, okay? But the institution itself seems to be veering away from abuses that its forefathers had done in the 1970s. And we just look at the basic statistics, okay, of, they were quicker campaigns, okay, but what was the wastage of lives in the 1970s? When martial law advocates talk about martial law deaths, they make the mistake of only talking about those who were killed during arrests in martial law, okay? Disappearances, so it numbers 3,000 thereabouts. They never include what went on in Mindanao. The losses were appalling, okay? Not just in the government, not just in the Muslim side, but also in the government side. There were half-trained men being sent to Mindanao in what they were calling as Kamagong battalions, okay? They were all being slaughtered left and right. I was a young boy then, younger than Melo, trucks, I was living in Cebu then, and trucks would be going in the night. Bodies were being brought in.
During blackouts.
Blackouts, yes. So it's that wastage of life. It's if you looked at pictures of Jolo, that city was leveled to the ground by, it's not really that well documented for something that was so terrible in our history. The literature on the war in Mindanao in the 1970s is very scant, okay? Nobody wants to talk about it, really. And codified, there's still no definitive history on the war in Mindanao. There's still none, okay, where people actually engage with government, witnesses on what happened. For example, I have my uncle who was an Air Force pilot in that period. Up to now, he refuses to say what went on. So that's what I'm saying about is that the AFP then was a different AFP, okay? You would have a certain personality who would say that he cut off the ears of his of those he killed. You remember that guy? You remember that guy? Yeah. So that's a thing. You don't have that now, and because of that, then the operations slow down. Okay, because you're more careful now. You don't want, because it's urban warfare. That's one, and you don't want. Because you don't want to get the Maranaos all angry against you, so you have to be very careful. And that explains the length of the operations, okay?
One more question. Since you're very knowledgeable. When I first ran across the two massacres, the one of 1972 and 74 in the Cotabato area, one in Sultan Kudarat, the other one was in Cotabato. No? I did not believe. I thought it was part of fake news of the internet that more than 1,000 were considered to have been killed in the second massacre. I forget if it's the Manila massacre or the, what do you call, the other one that involved a mosque. What do you think were the numbers in those massacres? You don't know. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Teka muna. On the record yan, no? Yung mga massacre na binabanggit nyo. Nakasama yung Lapiang Malaya sa Taft Avenue, no? Minasakir din yun before martial law. Before martial law, yeah. Naalala ko, Valentin de los Santos, di ba? Because I read history, but anyway. It's about 2 hours, my friends. This is one of the longest editions of our Tapatan sa Aristocrat. And we haven't gotten to the bottom of this. The issues would be, will inclusive growth be felt in areas where political dynasties exist? That is one glaring question. But anyway, to give a preview of what will happen next week, which will be our 4th anniversary, we would like to pursue the issue of peace. So, is there room for peace in the Philippines? So, yan, yung pag-uusapan natin. I'll just tell you who the guests are as soon as they confirm. So, please wait for our advisory. So, we'd like to thank our guests who took time out to be with us. And, of course, I guess there will be some ambush interviews later. So, thank you very much for your time. Sa ating kasamang si Mr. Custodio, isa po sa mga dalubhasa sa larangan ng kasaysayan, sa larangan ng militar. Si Professor Sara Raymundo is with us. Kasama rin si Felix Fariñas ng UP. At siyempre si Gani Abunda mula sa grupong All Out Peace Movement. Sa ngalan ni Sky, happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
Malapit na.
Malapit na.
Next Monday.